You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Welcome to the NY Patriot Show. In this episode, I got Lisa with me tonight, co-hosting the show. What is up, Lisa? Thank you very much.
How's it going? Good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And in this episode, this is a true crime episode. I'm not sure if maybe it might bother some people, the topic. I'm just letting you know it could be a little bit of a touchy one. But we will be talking about Theresa Knorr, the killer mom. And we'll be talking about that with Mike D from Take on the World podcast. Mike D, what is up? Thank you very much for coming on. And why don't you let everybody know who you are and what your deal is?
Okay, hi. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
I am Mike D from Take on the World. We cover, the podcast covers, let me just go back at how we started. I was on a podcast a few years ago with a friend of mine. The podcast is no longer running. He's doing another podcast now. And I had so much fun. We were just talking about the old days. We hadn't seen each other for a long time. We're talking about the old days, professional wrestling. He got out of the business about 18 years ago. And I've been in the wrestling business for 26 years now.
That's wild.
I had a retirement match at 20 years, and then my tag team partner passed away. And we had a memorial show for him, so I just wrestled about 6-7 weeks ago. I'm 53 years old, so my body's still sore.
Oh man!
But I work in a jail. At lunchtime, me and another fellow and a couple guys usually take lunch together. We were sitting down. We're just talking about like all these stupid things. And one of the guys said, "You guys should do a podcast." And I had been itching to do it since I was on Saturdays with Chicken Duck. And like it just rang a bell. And me and my normal co-host John said, "Hey, let's do it, man. Like we didn't care if anybody listened. It
was just fun anyway, probably, right?
Oh yeah, it was fun. It's a tension relief. So we
excuse to hang out.
Yeah, hang out and drink beer.
Yeah.
Like Prost.
Nice.
So we do. I consider it history. So even when we do true crime, it's historical. We do some knife reviews. We've done beer reviews. All these beers behind us we reviewed on our show. And pretty much we talk about whatever we want.
Yeah, I did notice that you did cover all sorts of topics.
Yeah, we sidetrack a lot. We just have fun with it. And in the last couple months, we've really been picking up and gaining some support. And it's good to see that people are watching and listening. So now I'm like motivated to like take it to the next level.
Yeah, like I was going through your stuff and I was like, he's got like true crime to like something about Machu Picchu and then to like beer. And I was like, damn. Yeah. That's like when you asked like what topic, I said there's actually several, but
yeah.
And you're like, well, Theresa Knorr is in my mind still. So I was like, all right, we'll go with that. That sounds good.
Yeah, this one hit close to home for me.
Real quick too, before we get into that, sorry to interrupt you. There are other people on your show as well besides you. It's just that I happen to have you.
My daughter sits in from time to time, Lexi Lee, and my son, who just turned 21, he sits in with me. And when I do it with him, we kind of do nerd stuff because I'm just an overgrown nerd. When I was growing up, I played D&D, and he does now. And so we talk about that. We talk about computer stuff because he's into computers. My wife will sit with me from time to time, and she was actually a professional broadcaster for 30 years before she left that to do something else.
Did that help with like podcasting?
It does. She has a lot of great ideas when it comes to how to stack the show up, because she did a call-in talk show for most of those years, and like she knows how to format it. And I started putting shorts up. She was bugging me to put shorts up. My other buddy who is on the Deluxe Edition network, which is a network that we're on, he kept on saying, you got to do shorts, you got to do shorts, you got to do. That's what everybody watches. Everybody's attention span is like that big. So the shorts have been doing really good. So she sits in with me from time to time. I usually have my guests or my co-host come up with topics, and then I do all the research, and I put it on a screen right in front of me so I can read it. And sometimes you can tell I'm reading it. Sometimes, you know, we get off track and we get passionate about something, and but we don't always give the absolute right information, but we give you something.
Yeah, you try.
So we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, Twitter, all that. Take on the TOTW pod, and then Facebook is TOTW podcast.
Awesome, man. And I think I do have some of your links. I have your link tree in the bottom, and I may have even have included your website, which I'm sure is probably on the link tree anyway. But
it is,
yeah.
And we're everywhere where you can listen to a podcast. We're rolling on that.
All major
we're on
podcasts.
Spotify, we're on iHeart, we're on Apple.
Nice.
We're like number 6 in history podcasts on Good Pods.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Good for
so you know, and that's nice to see too, because you know people are getting something out of what you're putting out.
That's cool. Exactly. So what actually even made you even cover this story? Like, was it something you came across? Was it something you knew about? You know, because I know you do say it's also kind of a form of history for you.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering.
I had no idea about this topic.
Really?
My tag team partner, my podcast partner.
That's awesome.
He'll call me up and he'll say, "Hey, dude, look this up," and that'll be our like. He came up with Machu Picchu. He came up with this. We did Mount Everest. We just did Mount Washington, which was just released today, and then next week my wife is on with me, and we're doing the Amish Stud, which is ripped from the headlines. They just had that Lifetime movie out, the Amish Stud, so we covered the real story and tried to divert reality from TV. But
what's that about, real quick? I haven't heard of that.
It's Eli Weaver. Eli Weaver was an Amish guy. Basically left the Amish community twice. He got married young, but he ended up having his wife murdered by one of his affairs. And she was actually Mennonite, the lady who actually did the murder.
Oh,
Wow.
the drama.
That's amazing.
Oh yeah, it's a crazy story.
That's great for a story, right?
So that'll be.
I mean, it's horrible what happened.
No,
Yeah,
right.
But
it's like don't look.
It's like what Mennonite do? Oh, this is almost like we're little separate religious factions here now.
Yeah. So that's next week.
Oh, nice.
And the shorts will start popping up over the weekend for that. And the shorts don't always have anything to do with the podcast. Like this beer that I'm drinking, which is something that we always have something to drink on our table. I made this. This is an Oktoberfest beer, but my son turned 21 October 10th. So he told me last year he wanted me to make an Oktoberfest for him for his birthday. So I made this in April. It's been lagering since April. And I actually took it to a local brewery, and the brewer, I asked, the brewer, like, hey, what do you think? And he said, I actually wish I had your Oktoberfest on tap instead of mine.
Oh, wow.
So
nice.
And I've won awards with my beer. I won Best in Show at one competition with a beer that I thought sucked when I first made it. And then it aged for a couple of weeks. And I cracked one open. I said, okay, I'll throw it in. And it ended up getting Best in Show. And the Oktoberfest, which I make all the time, I love a Marzen style beer. That one ended up second place. And I thought this was surely going to be first place. So I'm the kind of guy who, if I want to do something, I figure it out and I do it. I don't like paying anybody else to do something I could do myself. I built my own house. And I didn't know anything about building the house when I did it. I studied for 2 years and figured it out, and here I am sitting in my own house. But I always wanted to do that because my grandfather built this house.
That's cool.
So I built a motorcycle and I'm not mechanically inclined like motors and stuff, but I I got a bike and I changed it all up. I did, I hydro dipped it. I never done that before, but I learned how to do it and I do it. That's what so this podcast has really grabbed me because we're on 3 years now with this.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
So
You've been out longer than me. Yeah. I'm going to be
Congratulations.
3
That's
years,
awesome.
I think, in like January or February, maybe. Some shit. Wow, good for you. Good for you.
so that's me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, that was a good intro, too. And again, for the people listening, all his links are in the bottom, and I will remind you all at the end again anyway. But I guess we'll get into it then. Yeah, again, I guess, so then your boy sent it to you, and I guess you thought it was worth covering, huh?
Yeah. Well, when I started looking into it, I'm like, oh my God, dude, this is crazy. Like,
I've never heard of it until I saw your thing.
I hadn't either. And like these murders took place in the 70s or 80s. Yeah, 86. And I was 16 years old. Like, so, like,
Oh,
I never
yeah.
heard of
When
it.
were you
Like,
born? 78?
1970.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm 53. I'm the old guy.
No, I'm thinking, sorry. I'm stoned. I was like, oh, that was back in 70. All right. All right. So, yeah, sorry I interrupted you there and screwed you all up with the date.
No, it's good.
Yeah, but you said you were 16 years old when it happened. So then you don't even remember hearing about it then.
Yeah, like I remember a lot of stuff. Like I just watched something on when the U.S. Navy took out half of Iran's Navy in '88. I was actually in the Navy when that happened. I remember that clearly. Like that was a big thing for all of us. Like we all thought we were going to war. And, you know, so like that rings a bell. And there's some other stuff that we've done. Like it was the Angel of Death, who was a nurse who was killing patients in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. He actually worked at the same hospital where my mother worked.
Whoa.
Not at the same time, because I called her. I'm like, hey, did you know this dude? She goes, no, I didn't know him. I didn't work there at that time, but like everybody knew about him. And so that was in the Lehigh Valley where I grew up. So he went from Jersey to Allentown, and like that was well in my time frame.
Oh, wait. So then, that's right. You're in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Is that another reason why I guess the Amish thing was kind of interesting to you?
Oh yes, but the Eli Weaver story happened in Ohio.
Oh.
Which is the largest Amish community in the country is in Ohio.
Oh, jeez.
Now we have Lancaster, which is heavily Amish, heavily Mennonite, but there's Amish in New York, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, Missouri. Yeah.
Huge one. Yeah.
Because my dad lives in Iowa and he takes his deer meat to an Amish deer locker. They butcher it for him, and we do our own because I want to learn how to do that.
So now this lady, Theresa Knorr. Oh, these didn't happen. I was going to ask, did it happen in Pennsylvania? Maybe that was another reason why you were surprised you didn't hear it. But
no, she was
in California, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No.
California, and then she went to Illinois, Chicago. I guess in the end, that's where she was caught.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think.
She was in Utah for a little while, wasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
When she was on the run, she went a couple places. I'm trying to. I got my research up here right next to you guys. So,
Okay.
and we did this a couple weeks ago, and I've researched like 30 topics since then.
Yeah. She was born in Sacramento, California.
Okay.
Yes.
That's usually the first thing I have in the top, and I don't even have it. I have 7 pages of research on this one, because I go down a rabbit hole when I start researching stuff. I'm crazy. Like I
love that.
I want to know everything.
Yeah,
And my co-host John, he'll always ask me a question that I don't have the answer to.
Of course.
Or he does it on purpose, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
You know, it's funny. You know, it's funny. Teresa's done that to me a few times, and like, how is she supposed to know? She'll ask me a question, and I'm like, fuck, and I feel like edited it out. Because it's said, if you don't know that one question, some people will be like, well, now you don't know what the fuck you're talking about at all.
Yeah. I know, that's how I feel.
And it's so funny, and you're like, fuck.
Failed again.
Yeah, right?
So Theresa was born in 1946, and it was Theresa Jamie Cross. And she had a rough childhood.
I was going to say, wasn't she abused or something as a child or as
her father had Parkinson's, and he took out he had Parkinson's and had to quit his job, and he took out all the frustrations on the family, like many abusive husband wife or father son relationships. If the father's in a bad way, he takes it out on everybody.
Right.
I grew up in abuse, and that's why this one hit home for me.
Sorry, man.
So,
I'm sorry.
So she wanted to get out of the house like quick. So she was 16 when she got married to a 21-year-old dude.
You know, that is a very common thing too.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes I think you might end up making bad decisions because you're just trying to get out of the house, but. From things of just like even relatives in my family from back in the day, because of their parents being alcoholics and abusive, they got out like as soon as they fucking could, like some 15 or 16.
Yeah, she knew this guy for a couple months and got married to him, and boom, she dropped out of high school. They had their first kid in 1963. They had gotten married in 62, and she went through a string of bad relationships. She claimed that he was abusive, but she shot him in the back of the head.
Right. Yeah.
And the prosecutor said there was no provocation for it. She claimed that he was abusive, and
wait, so this was Theresa that did that already?
yes, this is Theresa as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old.
Oh, see, I didn't even know this.
Killed her husband.
That was her first. That was her first kill, right?
I didn't know that. I thought it was. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
because he tried to leave her or something, right? Wasn't that the case that she was very possessive, jealous, or whatever, and he was running skirt on her or whatever, and then he tried to leave, and this time it was like because he had tried to leave before or something.
Yes, you're correct.
Did you say running skirt?
I did. I can't believe it. Sorry.
No,
he was
I love
chasing
it.
tail. That was great. I loved it. I loved it. I was like, yo, that's great.
So she was charged with murder but acquitted. For the same reason you just mentioned. She claimed he was an alcoholic, was physically abusive, but nobody ever saw the abuse. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen, because abuse happens behind closed doors, and a lot of times, and you'll see in this that the abuse was happening later on, and these kids even tried to tell people, and they just,
it's so sad.
They just shrugged her off, like and that's something that we've found in a lot of the true crime stuff we've done. There have been red flags all over the field, all over, and either the authorities failed to act on them, or there wasn't enough information to act on them,
right.
Or hindsight is 20/20. So I look at it and say, why the hell didn't somebody do something? But we found that a lot with a lot of the true crime stuff that we've covered. It bothers me a lot because I work in the law enforcement community. So like, I hate to see that failure, especially when it comes to children or women being hurt. I hate that.
I think it's also a reflection of the culture back then. Back then, nobody really, I think it was a culture of children should be seen, not heard.
Yeah.
And so if children ratted their parents out, they were like, oh, their parents are probably just disciplining them and they just don't like it.
Right.
I think at some point it was cultural, not to say that it wasn't negligence, but it almost seems that way.
Well, I know in 85, I went to court and after being abused, and I was cut up. I was like eyes pasted shut, and the abuser got a $75 fine. They sent me back home with them.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
It is what it is. I wouldn't be the person I was today if I didn't endure it. So I don't ever look back and say, right, well, if I had only done this or if I had only done that, because my whole life would be different. Some of the things, if I had done them, I'd be in jail instead of working there. I'd be in jail. So, those things, I never wanted to become what he was. So,
Right.
in that case, Theresa's sister, Rosemary, testified against her to trial, saying nothing that she's saying is true. Like, she wasn't abused. He's not an alcoholic. He was chasing skirt, but there was none of the other stuff. She just got jealous. He was going to leave. She popped him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, oddly enough, after this whole case happened, after the murders happened, Rosemary, the sister, was found strangled to death. And they tried to connect it to Theresa, but they never did. And I don't think they ever solved that case.
Oh, wow.
Do you think she could have been technically close to a serial killer, maybe? If all these deaths were, if that was included, it's like, now you have multiple murders. I know there may not be technically like something that connects all of them, but.
Well, technically, the only person she killed was the ex-husband or the husband. She actually didn't kill the kids.
Mm.
And we'll get to that, but so if she killed her sister, they reopened that case in 93 after she was arrested. So I was 23 when she was arrested.
Ooh.
Like, you would think I would have heard about this, especially with the background and everything. But John came up with it. He just pulls him out his butt.
That's awesome.
She got married again to a Marine Corps private. That marriage lasted 5 years, and they had 4 kids. So they had 2 boys, 2 girls. She gave birth after she murdered her previous husband. Like right after her court case was over, she gave birth to her husband's second child. So now she's got 6 kids altogether.
She was pregnant when she killed him.
Yes. So maybe the pregnancy hormones had something to do with it. I know women get a little crazy when they're pregnant. I have 2 kids. I've been through it, but there's still no reason to.
No.
And especially if he was abusing her, I don't blame her. Like, if there was actual abuse, I don't really hold that against her. Like, you do what you got to do to survive.
Sometimes, you could have a person who's a little off, and then taking that abuse. You might be pretty quick to snap.
Right, and you're not in the right mental space when you're being abused either. So.
And then having been abused as a kid primes you for.
Yeah. Yes. And that was like one of my biggest fears, having kids, because of the abuse that I endured. I was afraid to have kids because I didn't want to become that.
Right.
And I never did, thankfully. I think because I had outlets for my frustrations, which was pro wrestling and working in a jail. So in a jail, you could be fighting every day. And pro wrestling, as much as people say it's fake, there's a lot goes into it. We were training 2-3 days a week. We were wrestling 3 days a week. So out of a week, like 5-6 days, I was in the ring, like either getting beat on or beating on somebody. So like that was a big thing to get the aggression out. So I made it through okay. My kids made it through okay. Let's see. She so the kids that she had was Susan, William, Robert, Theresa, and Terry Marie Knorr. So they named one of the daughters after herself. They got divorced, so they were married. They had their last kid in 1970. In December of 1978, they got divorced. Or they separated in 71. The divorce was final. And then she refused to let him see the kids. She went and got married 2 more times. Once to a railroad worker. And basically she would just leave the kids with him and go out and party. They were only married for a year and a half. and then she got married to Chester Harris, who was a newspaper copy editor. They married in 1976, and Susan got really close with him. Like that was the father figure that she latched onto. And then Theresa got jealous because he was showing the child more attention than she was showing her. And they filed for divorce in November the same year. They weren't even married for a full year. Supposedly, it was after she found out that he was taking consensual nude photos of women.
Oh.
So,
consensual nude photos.
Yeah, like so
He was
Was he pulling like a
risque
Jeffrey
for-
Dahmer type shit? Was that Dahmer that was going around taking pictures of chicks too?
What's that?
I don't remember.
Wasn't there a serial killer? It might have been Dahmer. I don't know why I'm thinking him. That he was like duping women into like him taking pictures of her.
Yes.
I think he might have taken a couple of them that way as well. I could be wrong.
Covered that one, but I can't. Like that might have been 2 years ago. We covered that one. I know Dahmer did. Yeah, for sure. So
sorry about that.
No, we do that all the time. We're completely off track sometimes.
I've done that to you like 5 times.
And we'll come back like, okay, what were we talking about?
Yeah.
So four failed marriages.
Jesus.
She started becoming physically, verbally, and mentally abusive towards all the children.
Well, I was going to say, I think at this point, she's the common denominator with all these failed marriages.
She's definitely bipolar or borderline personality. Sometimes they get misdiagnosed as each other until they see a full-blown psychiatrist, which she never did. So she became reclusive. She disconnected the phone. She made it her mission that the children would not see anybody else. She slowly, one by one, took them out of school. None of them went past the 8th grade. Theresa started putting on a lot of weight. And she blamed the kids for it. So she would force feed them so they would put on weight with her. Just not
That's so
right.
weird. Yeah.
When her oldest son left home, he moved into a small apartment. And according to those neighbors, they noticed the apartment was always filthy and it smelled like urine. So, and she never cleaned. She never cleaned anything in the house. And those neighbors started noticing all the kids were dirty. All the kids were smelly. They were the smelly kids. Like anytime they were outside, which was very, very little, they were like always seemed fearful of everything and very high strung. Well, and they say house, but it wasn't a house. It was an apartment. So you got 5 kids after the oldest moves up. 5 kids in an apartment.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
And that was her, and was she by herself?
By that time, she's by herself. No more husbands.
So it'd be a
she
total
never
of
got
6
married
of them
again.
in there anyway. Jeez.
Wow. It's like keeping a big dog in a small area.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just going to be super nervous and fidgety.
Yeah,
and high strung.
exactly.
Yeah.
And kids, they're rambunctious to begin with, and then
Right.
you pen them up, and there's no place for that to go.
Mm-hmm.
So this abuse lasted for years. She tortured the children.
Jesus.
She would beat them. She would force feed them, blaming her for the weight. Burn them with cigarettes. She would throw knives at them.
Oh my gosh.
She hit one of the kids with a knife, and Theresa cleaned the wound, stopped the bleeding, but would not get medical care. So, like, it's just crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody could do that to kids. It makes me sick. She would make the children hold each other down and beat them with a special paddle. So she would have the other kids hold one down, beat them, push them to the side, make everybody hold another one down, beat them. Like, she would go down the line, just torture.
You know how screwed up? That's so screwed up just for the kids holding him down. Oh.
I know. Well, when he brought the topic up to me, he mentioned devouring mother syndrome, which isn't really a syndrome per se. What it is it starts off with like a helicopter mom. Like they don't let their kids out of their sight. They're overbearing. it's just a pattern of behavior. It's not really a psychosis. But like why she did some of those things, the devouring mother syndrome never came into this case, but you could see how, you know, the things she was doing actually, it was manifesting itself in different ways, and it just it came up in abuse. Sheila and Susan took the brunt of all the torture. Now, Sheila, I believe, was the oldest girl from her first marriage. That was one of the questions that John asked me, who's Sheila? And I said, dude, I didn't write it down. I don't know. Terry, the youngest daughter, said in an interview that her mother resented Sheila and Susan while they were maturing and blossoming into young, attractive women, while she faced the prospect of losing her looks as she aged. At one point, she thought, with her fourth husband, that her fourth husband turned Susan into a witch. And when that happened, or because of that, the abuse intensified on Susan. After one beating, Susan ran away from home. She was picked up by the police. She tried to tell them the story. They said, "You're full of shit." Took her to a psychiatric hospital, where she told the same story to the staff. And they said, no, that didn't happen. So the red flags start going up. When they called the mom to come pick her up, they told her what she had said, and she goes, "Oh, she's mentally ill. You can't believe anything she says."
That's sad.
Yeah. And like that this is where red flags really are starting. They're all over the field, and someone should have done something. I think the mental health facilities back in that time were rudimentary, and they were just a way to house people like a prison. And I don't know how much healing actually happened through those places. Yeah, because we have a couple of them that
could have made people worse, probably.
Oh yeah. Well, they put them in isolation. They get them doped up on medication.
Right.
And you know, when I first started in corrections, we had something where they would give a shot to the overactive inmates. It was Thorazine, and they would do what we called the Thorazine shuffle, and they would just walk slowly along, looking down.
Zombified them.
Yeah. And you'd see that in these mental institutions all the time.
That's so sad.
Yeah, so when she got home from this, because she had snitched, they immediately punished her by beating Susan. The mom was wearing leather gloves. She forced every sibling to take turns assaulting her.
You know, it's a good question that Donna just brought up. I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but like, was there any accounts, like, considering she's in an apartment and not even in her own house with property, did any of the neighbors ever, or people living next door ever, like, say that they thought anything weird was going on?
No, but I could tell you, I lived in a row home when I was going through my stuff, and none of my neighbors said anything.
Oh man, that's so sad.
And I had an older sister who went through it as well, and it wasn't until my stepfather went after my stepbrother that I stood up to him, and that was the last night I lived in that house. I was 16 years old.
Oh my goodness!
Because I picked him up and I slammed him on the floor, and I said, "You're not putting him through this." And then I left, and that's when we went to court. They sent me home with him, but I had petitioned the court to become a self-sovereign ward of the state. So I was emancipated as long as I went to the state counseling, and I could live on my own because I was making good money. I could live on my own as long as I maintained my grades and always saw that counselor once a month. But all the teachers at school knew what was going on, so I got away with everything. Like, I was just a horrible kid. Like, everything I did was to act out for attention, and they let me go because they didn't want to send me back to that. So her mom handcuffed Susan under the table for the next 2 years. She was handcuffed under the table. They only allowed her to get up every once in a while because she was getting pressure sores. It's crazy. She was force fed, and if she vomited while she was being fed, they made her eat the vomit. Like, this is, see, when I talk about my abuse was nothing compared to this.
Yeah, no, this was beyond.
Yeah.
Beyond. Yeah.
No child should ever have to endure any of this, especially this.
So, I mean, at first I thought, she's a narcissist. That's why she's, pretty much isolating the girls for developing and looking better and blossoming, because she's not, and that's part of narcissism. But this goes beyond that. I
think that's where it started. Yeah. And I don't know what she got out of the abuse. Control.
Right.
Is the only thing I think of, because now, if I'm handcuffed under a table for 2 years, there's got to be a point where my mom leaves. I'm not gonna be there when she gets back.
Right.
Like.
Right.
Okay.
But then you get Stockholm, don't you think? I mean, on some level.
I think they all these kids did, because all the kids had a part in the abuse. Mm-hmm. They were made to take part in it.
Right. And if you went against them, then you were going to be the next one being held down and beat by everybody
absolutely.
else. So
everybody was like, oh, okay, I don't want to get beat, whatever you say.
Right.
So after the 2 years, she was begging to be released. So they uncuffed her. The mom handed Terry a gun. That's just the youngest girl. I don't exactly know how old she was at this point, but I'm thinking 13, maybe. She told her to point it at Susan, and if she moved, shoot her. So I don't know what happened in the meantime, because it says someone dropped a spoon in the kitchen, it spooked Terry, and the gun went off. So I don't know what happened. But because that morning, Theresa went on a rampage, psychotic rampage, and was assaulting all the children. Just wanted to boom, boom. She's walking through the. So now they're in the kitchen making oatmeal. I don't know. And someone drops a spoon. Terry gets spooked. She flinches. The gun goes off. Shot Susan. So the bullet lodged in the back of her neck. They cuffed her under the table while she bled.
She survived.
She survived. Theresa was more upset that she was getting blood on the carpet than the fact that she got shot. Like, Theresa was like, "Oh, you're getting blood on my carpet." Like, Mom, I'm bleeding from my neck. What do you want me to do? You chained me underneath the table again. Yeah. Theresa decided she was going to nurse her back to health. So she took her from underneath the table, took her up to the bathtub, and made her stay in the bathtub for weeks. So obviously she got sepsis. She survived and begged her mother, like, just let me leave. If you let me leave, I'm not gonna say nothing to nobody. And Theresa said, okay, I'm gonna let you leave, but we gotta get that bullet out of you because I don't want nobody asking questions. So they managed to get the bullet out of Susan, and she passed out. And by that time, there was an infection. There was sepsis. It was bad. That same day, Theresa packed up all Susan's belongings in a trash bag, tied her arms and legs with duct tape, and put tape over her mouth, and ordered her two sons, Robert and William, to put Susan in the car. They drove to Squaw Valley, where Robert and William placed her on the side of the road on top of the trash bags containing her belongings. Theresa ordered Robert to douse the bags and Susan with gasoline and set them on fire. She was still alive.
Oh my gosh.
They thought she was dead, but she was actually still alive, because when they did the autopsy, she had smoke and soot in her lungs. So her smoldering body was found the next day, but due to the state of the remains, they were unidentifiable. So she was listed as Jane Doe, number 4873/84. She was 17 years old when she was murdered. So now Susan's out of the way. Sheila became the target of all her anger and abuse. Now, Sheila was 20 at this point. Now, when me and John did this, I'm like, why didn't she leave?
Right.
Like, one of the sons was allowed to leave. Why didn't she leave? Instead of leaving, she got her freedom by her mom forcing her into prostitution. By May of 1985. So Sheila actually became the breadwinner in the house because mom doesn't work. She's on unemployment.
Wow.
Damn.
So she should have been collecting mental disability at this point.
Yeah.
Something.
I'm sure she could have gotten it.
Because she was the breadwinner, she allowed her to leave almost whenever she wanted to. But it only lasted for a few weeks because, and money was coming in, so mom was happy. The abuse died down on her. Theresa became angry and accused Sheila of being pregnant. She also accused Sheila of contracting an STD that Theresa claimed she got from the toilet seat. So Theresa ended up with an STD, was blaming the daughter because you're a prostitute. It must have came from you.
Wow.
Sheila denied the accusation. That sent Theresa into a rage. She beat Sheila and locked her in a small closet with no ventilation. The other children were told, and I question, are they still children at this point? Because she's 20.
Yeah.
She's the oldest daughter.
She's now.
Teresa's the youngest, and I'm thinking she's at this point 16 or 17.
Yeah.
They were ordered not to open the door, and they were forbade from giving her any food and water. Terry, at one point, disobeyed and gave Sheila a beer. And I don't know if mom ever found out, but in an interview, Terry said that Theresa wanted Sheila to confess. That was mother's way, beating them until they confessed. That is narcissism. To end the punishment, Sheila confessed to being pregnant, but Theresa said Sheila was lying and refused to let her out.
Yeah.
So she put Sheila back in the closet for another 3 days. Or she put her back in the closet. 3 days later, on June 21st, 1985, Sheila died of dehydration and starvation. The body was left in the closet for an additional 3 days before they discovered she was dead. So 6 days she's in this closet, dead. There had to be a smell.
I was going to say, wouldn't the smell have been the key in?
Well, it was because after this, they tried to cover it up by starting a fire in the house, and the neighbors were smelling something, and they finally called the cops. Well, they came to put out the fire because they saw smoke. And they said, call the cops, fire company. They came to put out the fire, and Let me go back for a second because I jumped ahead. They disposed of her body as well. They put it in a cardboard box, took it to Turkey Tahoe Airport and dumped the body. It was discovered a few hours later. Again, the body was not identifiable and classified as Jane Doe number 6607/85. But they lived in that apartment with that stench for almost a year before they were just like, okay, we got to move. So now they try to burn the apartment. Cops come. It's actually it was more than years. 15 months they were in that apartment with that stench. It just never went away. So they had Terry dump 3 containers of lighter fluid in the apartment, started a fire. Neighbors reported it. It did very little damage. The closet that Sheila was kept in was undamaged, which is key because later on they go back and they're able to pull forensic evidence out of it when she finally gets caught.
The irony that closet wouldn't burn.
Yes.
Yeah.
The sons, Howard and William, are now legal age. They severed all ties with her. They were basically the ones who killed the first sister. The second sister died of starvation. Technically, mom killed her because she kept her in there, but there was no overt act of murder.
Right. I I have a quick question. Now, do you know if Theresa was ordering them to dump the body? And if she was, is she telling them not to bury the bodies? Because it seems like, why would these brothers who lived with the sisters and they see the sister get abused, why they wouldn't have the compassion to bury the body? I don't know. Do you see when people bury bodies, it's out of compassion sometimes. Yeah. Whereas, when you dump them, it's more of emotional.
They were ordered to dump the bodies.
Gotcha.
She was specific on how the first body was to be taken, lit on fire. The second body, she said, you drive it out there, you leave it there, and you come back.
Damn.
And that's what they did. Now both of these boys were old enough to bounce too, and they didn't bounce until after this.
Did you ever wonder if maybe two options? Maybe some of these kids might have been either had done stuff that the mother made them think you're just as bad as me, so if you were to tell, you'd go to jail also. Or do you think they had even done stuff that maybe hasn't even been known of that they know they would have gotten in trouble for?
Absolutely, I believe that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
So, okay, now when the second sister is killed, Terry is 16. She's now 16. She runs away. She uses Sheila's ID to pass herself off as an illegal adult. Oh. So now only Robert remained with mom. He moved to Las Vegas. She moved with him. They tried to keep a low profile. It didn't last. In 1991, Robert fatally shot a bartender during an attempted robbery. So now his life is going downhill. He was convicted and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Now mom's by herself. She starts taking care of an elderly woman. Terry, after escaping money, attempted to report the sister's murders to the Utah police. They didn't believe her. They dismissed it. They said it was fictional, and they sent her to a therapist. The therapist said the story was fantasy. Red flags again, all over the place. Damn. So you got neighbor red flags. You got the first daughter running away, going to the psychiatric hospital. Nobody does anything. Red flags. She reported to police. Red flags. This girl goes to the police. Red flags. Nobody does anything. Nobody believes her. She talks to a licensed therapist. Red flags. They didn't do nothing.
Do you wonder if maybe nothing was done on purpose for some reason? I mean, that's getting a little bit conspiratorial now. But
I think it's what Lisa said. It's a time. At that time, child abuse wasn't taken as seriously as it is now. And nobody wanted to get involved in it. It's a family matter. Just like some people, even now, believe spousal abuse is a family matter. There's none of my business. Like, yes, it is. Someone's being hurt. It should never happen. So they didn't listen to her. On October 31st, 1993, Terry phoned the hotline for America's Most Wanted. And while they didn't cover the story, she was told to contact the detectives in Placer County, California, where Susan's body was found. Thankfully, these detectives took her seriously. They investigated the two Jane Does, the links between them, and to see if any of the details of Terry's story matched. They did. William Knorr was arrested on November 4th, 1993. Now, he was arrested in Woodland, California. If you go on YouTube, even in the video we put up of this, we have part of his interview that he did with Nightline or somebody.
Okay.
And he talks about this whole thing, and he kind of makes excuses for what he did. And like we were talking over it, and I'm like, I had to cut it out, and that's fucking bullshit. Like, that's just an excuse after excuse after excuse. I mean, you knew what you were doing. You know, your mom told you to do it, but that doesn't excuse what you did.
It's almost like he was trying to be the good son.
Yeah. Yeah. Robert Knorr was charged with his sister's murders while he was serving a 16-year sentence. November 10th, 1993, Theresa Knorr was charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, and 2 special circumstances charges, multiple murder and murder by torture. She initially pleaded not guilty. But when she went to court and she saw that her son Robert was going to testify against her, she pled guilty on the condition that they would take the death penalty off the table. So on October 17th, 1995, Theresa Knorr was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences and is currently locked up in the Women's Correctional Institution in Chino, California. She had a parole hearing in July of 2019. She was denied release. The fucked up thing is her next parole hearing is next year.
No way.
It's July of 2024. To think that there's even a skinny sliver of a chance that she could be walking the streets again makes me sick. William was sentenced to probation in order to undergo therapy for participating in his sister Susan's murder. Like, legitimately, he killed Susan by lighting her on fire. So,
Right.
but he testified, so that was his. He still had to service. The other guy had to service 16 years, but he got no charges from this. Robert got all his charges dropped except for accessory after fact. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 3 years to be served concurrently with a 16-year sentence. So he's not getting any extra time.
16 years.
Like, that's no punishment. After Terry ran away, she was married twice, eventually moved to Sandy, Utah, where she lives with her second husband. The funny thing was, she worked at a grocery store as a cashier. Her mom lived in the same neighborhood before she was arrested. They never ran into each other. They never had any contact, and she didn't know that she was there. But imagine that lady, she could have walked in the store and saw Terry, and it could have started all over for her. Terry died in 2011 at age 41.
She already passed? Terry did?
Yeah, the youngest daughter. So 2010 horror film The Afflicted was loosely based on this case. The murders were profiled. It was an A&E interview that he was on. That's what it was. A&E series, Cold Case Files. There's also series Most Evil, the series Wicked Attraction, the series Evil Lives Here, and Deadly Women. That's the case. The research turned my stomach.
Yeah.
But once I get into research, I can't stop. So
that happens.
So that's Theresa Knorr, a truly, truly evil human being.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing when I kind of like looked into it, a lot of times, I'm going to be honest, when I have a guest on, I might listen to like 10 minutes just to make sure that they know how to talk, in the podcast. And then sometimes I'll lightly just like look at the topic maybe online. I don't want to like have you come on and hear something I just listen to you do. You know what I'm saying? So there was a lot of stuff with this woman I did not know about prior. So like I already thought it was a wild story, just kind of knowing what went on with the kids, a little bit. So to me, that was definitely something wrong with this woman.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way she should ever walk the streets again. And in my opinion, the brothers shouldn't either. I believe in redemption. I'm not a hardcore, like, even though I've worked in the jail for so long, I'm not a hardcore person that says nobody's redeemable. If you're a criminal, always a criminal. I don't believe that. I believe people can redeem themselves, and I've seen it. Yeah. But I don't think these people can. Just that amount of abuse, that amount of statistics.
Sadistic.
That's it. Actions by all of them. It's just, I feel physically sick now just thinking about it.
Yeah. Just like even everything with the, like I said before, just having the kids involved in it.
Yeah.
That's going to screw them up,
No, they're done.
They had no chance. It was really screwed up.
Yeah. It's so sad.
It is very sad, and I mentioned this when we did this on our show, that I actually sent a letter to the parole board and basically said, please do not let this woman out of jail, because she will offend again. There's no doubt in my mind. And if she gets her hooks into any one of her kids again, they'll offend again. She just had some kind of power over these kids to put them through that abuse, have them not leave, and have them participate in the abuse of the other siblings. Like she had some kind of hook on them.
Yeah.
I have to keep an eye out to hear about this parole hearing too. So.
What Thrash just said, the quick blip that I read on Theresa was that when she moved to Utah, and that's how I knew she moved to Utah, she was kind of like born again. She was taking care of a woman, kind of had transcended her life or whatever. And then when she was, I guess, incarcerated, that she was sending letters back to people, I guess, in Utah, saying how, everything in Christ or something to the effect of being like a born again.
Right. She was born again, but the lady she was taking care of, supposedly she was stealing money from her.
Wow. Wow.
Jeez.
Like I said, I believe in redemption. And if religion's your thing, that's cool. If that's what gets you through the day, good for you. But you can't just say it, you got to live it. And she wasn't living it.
Right.
Yeah, very.
Now, that was speculation that she was stealing from. She was never charged with anything, so maybe I should say allegedly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, whether she'd stole or not, what she had done previously kind of is a little heavier than. But.
Yeah, her life started out murdering someone.
Yeah.
You're 16 or 17, 18. You're still a kid.
Oh,
you're still a kid. And that's how her
decisions.
life started out. It just kept going down that path. And maybe that incident messed her up mentally.
Right.
Not an excuse, but an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Was there any, not to go back to kind of like the conspiracy end of it, but was there anything ever like kind of looked into about like how did all these things that popped up just kind of get looked over?
There wasn't. I don't think there ever will be. And like Lisa said, it's one of those things where abuse was just not thought of in the same manner as it is now. Like, the baby boomers, spare the rod, spoiled child type thing. And that's one thing, being stern and maybe whacking your kid in the butt or smacking their face or something. That's one thing. But to out and out physically abuse someone, and like everybody's sensitive to things now. So you say the wrong word and it's abusive to people. But back then, nothing was abusive to anybody. They just beat the crap out of people.
Yeah.
There's a couple states in the country where they still have mutual combat laws. So if you and I want to get in a fight, if we're in one of those states, we both agree to get in a fight, the cops can't do nothing. I think Oregon or Washington is one of them.
I didn't know that.
Mutual combat laws.
Mutual combat.
Yeah.
Go out in the street with your white gloves and you smack them in the face.
Yeah.
They challenge you to a duel. Wow, that's some wild shit. Damn. Yeah. No, I was just wondering. I mean, again, I keep forgetting back then. That's another good point too. Slapping your kid around with your hand or your belt was probably like fucking common. So, maybe. Yeah.
I think it was frowned upon if you didn't.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like it was almost like, you're not rearing them well.
And look where we are now.
Well, I know.
We stopped hitting our kids.
In my elementary school, I was the last kid to get paddled in my school. You usually get called I'm 53, so You used to get called to the principal's office. You got called to the principal's office, they'd make you grab the desk and you get whacked with the paddle. And on the last day of that school year, I got called to the principal's office, and I go down, and he just looked at me. He goes, "It's just fitting. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just fitting that you're the last kid to get whacked with this paddle." And he didn't hit me hard. He just gave me one whack. And I'll tell you how crazy my mom was. The first time they paddled me, I went home and said, "I got paddled at school." And she said, "What?" She grabbed me, drove me back up to that school, in my kid mind, kicks the door down to the principal's office, goes in and starts screaming at him, "How dare you strike my child, blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, Mom, get him, get him." And she says, "You never again hit my child without my permission. Now you have my permission." Turns around, walks out. I'm like, "What?"
Wow.
What? Like, why go through all that?
Damn.
Hope you're not listening, Mom.
Like, you're like, wow, that just turned real quick.
Yeah, I'm like, what do you...
What's happening here? No.
Yeah, get her.
No.
Well, thank you very much, man. That was a pretty wild story. Like I said, there was a lot more to it than I thought. So,
I appreciate you having me on.
Of course.
It was great meeting both of you.
Oh yeah, I loved how you had notes to read off. That was impressive.
I'm obsessive about notes.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, you know, and honestly, there are a few other topics. That other one you were talking about sounds real interesting to me. So, you know, if you want to hit me up in the future and let me know when you want to come
Which
back.
one was that?
The Amish thing?
Oh, yeah, that'll drop next week. So if you want to revisit that in a couple months.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Save those notes. I'll get you back on in the future for that. Yeah.
After we do the show, I take everything about 3 weeks later and I put it on another hard drive. So
I do the same shit. I have an external hard drive and I move everything over.
And I duplicate them because one of my hard drives died on me and I thought I lost everything, but I got it to work long enough just to copy it over.
Yeah, I got to do it just because it takes up ridiculous amount of space on my fucking computer.
Yeah, I have a 2 terabyte
external hard
solid state drive. I have a 1 terabyte solid state drive, and my computer has a terabyte on it. So, and
nice.
I used to edit all our wrestling videos and everything. So I still have all that stuff from 16 years. Actually, we ran shows for about 10 years, but 10 years of running shows. I have every match somewhere.
You know, it's with me, just from doing stuff in 1080p, every episode's at least 10 to 15 gigs just in the video. So, like, after, 10 videos, it's like, shit, I just took up, 200 fucking gigs, you know? So it starts to add up after a while, especially between both shows. But, thank you again very much, Mike. Do you want to let everybody, know, again, plug your stuff? What's up?
Okay, it's at TOTW Pod on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. It's TOTW Podcast on Facebook. And if you go to deluxeeditionnetwork.com, not only is my show on there, but all the shows in that network. And there's just something for everybody there. I encourage you to touch base with Casey, and I'll send you his info.
Awesome, and thank you very much for coming on. All the links, I think your link tree is in the bottom already, which has everything in there regardless. And Lisa, thank you very much for jumping on tonight.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. And that was it was a perfect episode, man. I really appreciate it. I wanted to cover some just weird true crime. It is kind of getting close to Halloween, so it was kind of a little bit worse than I thought, so unfortunately.
Yeah.
But like I said again, there is was going to be a little graphic, so I guess that warning was fitting. And that is the end of another NY Patriot episode. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.